So tonight we continue with the study of planetary transition, which is like almost observing ourselves in this very moment, right? It's like observing our planet Earth in the present time. What is going on with us? And for that, we have our dear friend, Leito Vieira. He's going to bring some highlights that definitely were inspired by his mentors and the mentors of this house. And with no further ado, let's welcome Leito.
Thank you. I like the nice Leito. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, good. A little bit better. Hopefully by the end we'll be good afternoon, good evening. It'll be good evening then. But I'm really happy to be here to give a continuation to what we start in the month of January. Can't believe it's already the end of February, but time goes by quickly. I would like to call our attention to two things. The first, that it wasn't by chance. We didn't get together and say, read this message, read that message. But the message that Luizio read today, do you still have the page of the book and the number of the message? It talked about what? Solidarity. Yes. Page 163. Let me see the book. Is that the new? Okay, still the same, the old edition. So 163, right? Page 163 talking about solidarity. It's not by chance. Because tonight, a lot that we will visit or revisit for some of us will be about solidarity. Solidarity not from our next door neighbor, but far, far neighbors that we have that care about us, right? And the second thing I want to also highlight is that in conjunction of studying this book, Planetary Transition, it's important that we also put our hands in this book right here. Tonight, a lot that we will read is in chapter 11 of this book, the Genesis, okay? And the mentor actually brings this message to us, that a lot of the information, sometimes we read it here, and we're like, okay, it seems like it's stuff from the past. We don't pay much attention to it. But the helps that we get from other planets, from other spiritual worlds, if we want to call it that way, it's in here. The highlights are here, okay? Not the highlights. The book is actually more of a highlight, but the core is right here. So we can always go back and learn from it. Planetary Transition. What have we seen thus far? Session 1, we covered what? We cover the introduction, the new pathways, and a special visitor. Remember what happened on what we learned in the opening. Anybody would like to take a shot? Or perhaps the new pathways or special visitor? Anything that you remember. It's okay. Okay. So Yasko is mentioning the tsunami, that this was actually the work that is being developed here is right after the tsunami of 2004 in the Indian Ocean. Great highlight, because we're going to still talk about it a whole lot, and we will revisit that idea too. The spirit is Manuel Filomeno de Miranda through Divaldo Franco, bringing us what was happening in the spirit realm in conjunction to what was happening on Earth. Today we will kind of like go through some tough moments that the mentor describes to us, or Manuel describes to us what was happening in the physical as well as in the spiritual realm, both the negative and both the positive as well, because we always tend to look at the negative, right? But it's important that we also give emphasis to the positive. So the new pathways. The new pathways is what? It's what's happening right now, as Alba mentioned. It's happening to us. It's happening, within ourselves, in the Spirit Center, in other arenas as well. It's important to highlight that the help is not only coming from the spiritist in the spiritist arena, but everywhere else. And we will see a little bit of this tonight as well. And the special visitor. What was this special visitor? A special visitor, a high order spirit who came from a different constellation to come and give a message to where, to the spiritual realm, the spiritual colony where Manuel Filomeno de Miranda was is located throughout this description of what was happening. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda is not alone, right? He had a friend, Oscar. I don't know if you remember Oscar, right? And we're going to visit a little bit more about this tonight too. But it's important for us to kind of bring these highlights. There are many more highlights, but we're not going to spend too much time on it. Tonight, we will study the actual revelation, the revelation message, and earthly itineraries, what they received from the mentor, because we stopped right at the mentor was going to talk to the group of people who were going to be working in the endeavors here on Earth to help, especially in that location of the Indian Ocean, that was affected by the tsunami of 2004. Okay. Now, there are a couple of things that we would like to highlight as well, is the environment where they were, right? How they created the environment for that mentor to come. With music, we brought the music, and we can go back to chapter 1, to session 1, through the video that Daniel had made available to all of us. But there was a huge preparation for this, brother to come and give us the message, right? And tonight we're going to bring some highlights of the actual message. He actually brings his position, which I thought was really interesting for us to share, because it's not, even though it's a high order spirit, we can see through his opening of his speech, whatever we want to call, that it's a very humble spirit, well developed. We saw last time as well the order of spirits, how high we can get, right, in terms of morality, intellectually as well, in many ways. But one thing that we would like to highlight is how humble they are, and the solidarity that they are implementing on Earth in the spiritual realm, as well as helping those who are here. And he says the following: representing the beautiful globe of love installed in one of the Pleiades, wrapped in special vibrations made of photons that form a luminosity composed of blue tones, we are here in answer to the invitation of the sublime governor of planet Earth. So he's responding to an invitation. Who is the governor? Of Jesus. Plain simple. Imagine us being invited to speak on behalf of Jesus. It's quite high. So much so that we think about it. Well, we kind of describe a little bit where Manuel Filomeno Miranda was, the environment that they were able to create. And this is a higher order spirit compared to the location that he was. So he's pretty high. And he says the following: although I am not in a position to speak on behalf of the spirit's guides, higher guides of him, I bring our commitment to contribute with you to the program of elevating humanity through the reincarnation of servants of good, purposely prepared for the sublime endeavor. So, what is about to take place, it's pretty big. There is a preparation. There is the individuals who are connected with both realms of life. They're pretty high order spirits, and we can connect with them. This is something that I want that I would like to remind everyone that we are part of this, one way or the other, because we are all bathed, sunk, if we can say this way, on one aspect of our lives, that we're here to progress. Whether we like it or not, we have to progress. We can say, nah, I'm just going to stay here. But the rate of the speed, how things are moving, technology, for once, the way we're being pushed every single day to move on, we can see that we're part of this as well. This is not the first time, this is a great highlight as well, that he mentions that, and this is again the mentor, this is not the first time that the earth has received travelers from other dwellings at the request of Jesus Christ. It also happened in the past at the time of the monumental transition of forms, when shapers of the organic vessel delved into the dense physical mass to the characteristics that now define its inhabitants. Those noble ambassadors of the light came from the constellation Auriga to contribute to the construction of present humanity, including other non-moralized intelligence who, after having concluded a number of evolutionary stages, happily returned to their own beloved homes. It's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. It has happened, and it's happened again. Chris highlighted earlier today, and he was reading, that this is the moment that we're living right now. This is the actual environment that we're living right now. Receiving high order spirits, as much as we don't see, as much as the media and what's happening out there is pushing the negative, we're receiving great information, help from these guides. Here is just a small picture. Marcelo, can you turn off the light, please? That I would like to bring it to you, that this is Auriga right here. And for us to highlight this a little bit better, I brought this. This is Auriga right here. Okay, this is the constellation. The spirit that we're referring to, he comes from this constellation right up here. So it's a different constellation altogether. Okay, it's not the same place. This is actually Capella over here, the sun. This constellation is made out of 3 main suns, as you can see over there, okay, and small stars, and many planets. The spirit comes from, the spirit that is speaking to us is actually from the Pleiades right there. So we can turn it back on the light. Why is this important to us? Again, when I started reading this and I went into it, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt so small. I felt so small reading the book in my chair, that we think that we construct the world around us in such a way, and we look at it, it's like, wow, this is so small. I went into, I don't know if it helped me in a way or if it made me, I don't know, any more happier than after, and I'll get to that point. When I start exploring how far these constellations are, I mean, it's hard to, I didn't go into the details of the actual suns, but they're like 4 point something light years from us. I think the Pleiades, it's actually a little bit further, or one or the other, I can't remember now. But I start thinking, we are connected with these minds. It's huge. At the same time, it makes us feel small. It's like it expands our environment in such a way that it's like, I got to think a little bit outside of the little world that I construct of getting up in the morning, just have, this physical body life. It's beyond that. It's way more than that. We're not talking about having a connection with the other person on the other side of the world through phone connections, to be able to fly faster or anything like that. No, we have connections with individuals from other galaxies. It's just amazing. If that doesn't blow your mind, to me, I was like, wow, I had to stop and think and rethink. And every time I look at it, it's just, look at the stars. And we actually have this message, I believe, from St. Augustine in the Gospel According to Spiritism, where he tells us to, at the end of the day, when it's night, look to one of the stars. Pick one. Perhaps we came from there. Perhaps we are one of these spirits that are helping now. That Manuel Filomeno de Miranda reminds us that many of those who have reincarnated on Earth in the past, they are reincarnated now, or they will reincarnate to continue the work of developing this new society, this new mentality. But let's move on, because that's not everything that we have to learn from this chapter. He says, the help brought by the missionaries were for the earth to advance in technology, science, philosophy, religion, politics, ethics, and morals. These are the spirits who brought to us before. Nonetheless, most of the development occurred in an area of intelligence and not sentiment, which explains the current stage of evolution, rich in knowledge but poor in spiritual virtues. It's exactly what we're seeing right now, where we're so well advanced in many, many areas, but there are certain things that we look at one another and we say, really? It doesn't connect, right? One of the highlights that we brought the last time was that we are more compelled to help an animal, but our neighbor is lacking affection. I'm not a human being. I'm not discounting the animals. We should help the animals. It's another living being as well. But what's happening when we have to pay attention to our neighbor, to our co-worker, to someone who is in need, despite what has happened in the past, right? Occasional earthly events bring destructions that are always intended to foster progress and to obey a higher plan to elevate the earth to a level of a world of regeneration. It's not for us to go back. These are just highlights, folks. It's not for us to go back and say, where's God in this whole thing? Why, in what way, since I brought the highlight, I'd like to clarify this and make it useful to us. How does it happen? And what happens after we go through a difficult moment? We become more humble. Number one, how? Through suffering, right? When we see somebody who is suffering, especially a loved one, we tend to do what? Extend a hand. Where if everything was fine, well, we don't even say anything. Do we call and say, do you need anything? How's it going? Right? Or is it just during the happy moments that we are connecting with one another? So the greater issues that we have also, they're meant to bring us together, as much as it happened in 2004 in the Indian Ocean for some of us. Many barbaric spirits who were held, I'm sorry, this is still the message from the mentor, by the way. Many barbaric spirits who were held back from reincarnating, so not to impede the development of the planet, are now being reborn. Some appear exotic, others aggressive, seeking their primeval origins in unconscious reaction against progressive society, but having the holy opportunity to reshape their ideas, hone their sentiments, and participate in the unstoppable upward march. So there's progress, right? But there's also, we have to take in account here these high order spirits who are also in command of who's going, who's not going to reincarnate on earth. So one thing is for us to think about it, right? If it's happening, there is a high order that is allowing it to happen. It will come a time that these barbaric minds, they're not going to reincarnate anymore. There will be a point that will say, enough is enough. As well as these minds, they will not be able to connect with the minds that are already reincarnated on earth in the psychosphere, the psyche of the planet Earth. That's what I'm trying to say. The discarnated mind too, right? We have to acknowledge both sides. It's not only who is reincarnated, but also who are living around the planet, waiting to reincarnate or vibrating with the planet, right? They have to also vibrate well. Remember, on the introduction of the book, this is talking about this evolutionary path that the planet Earth that is going through right now. So it has to be on both sides. Just as millions of high order spirits will descend from our sphere to the Earth, as it already happened, for the inevitable confrontation between selfless love and destructive violence, giving way to clashes characterized by mercy and compassion, other missionaries of education and solidarity who strove to promote them in previous lives will also return, contributing from birth to the construction of the new mentality, thus helping to speed up the changes that are already occurring. So it's a collective work. It's a collective work. And the mentor also mentions that, I'm not so sure if I brought the next slide, but the mentor also mentions that the work is helping in different arenas, in different areas. I believe I did bring, maybe not. That it's happening in different locations. It's not just in this colony where Manuel Filomeno Miranda was, or still is. We don't know at this point. But it's happening all throughout. There is one thing that I felt really interesting, and it's a moment for us to stop and think. But wait. We have technology. We have mediumship. Why can't we connect with these higher minds and do the work ourselves? Why? Let's think. Why do we need a higher order spirit to come from another constellation all the way to planet Earth to bring the message? Why do we need other helpers from another constellation, Capella, to come and help us? Why do you think? Anybody?
I give it a try. Because of our moral state of development, we haven't learned yet how to move forward. Like we need teachers to teach us how to get out of the old habits to acquire new habits.
Anybody else?
As Alba said, I think also we are in different levels. Sometimes we are very intelligent, very high-tech. However, not everybody is spiritualized. Some people are just technological. So, and if you're not looking for the spiritual side, the knowledge that comes from, some people are not waiting for that. So why am I going to give you a power that you're not looking for?
Very well said. And it is true. But there's a couple of things that I would like to highlight, and I would like to bring an example. I'll put myself as an example. Why I cannot change certain things in my house. And we all go through that with the individuals that we live with. We come to the center, we pray, we do all kinds of things. We try to live a error-free, that doesn't mean we're not going to error-free life, but we still cannot make changes. Just for us to think about it, right? That's one. And I know Yasko is like, please, let me talk. But this is for us to think. Yeah, it's 191.
I think it's an illusion, actually, if you think you can change someone that don't want to change.
Okay.
You may try because that will stay in some back of the mind of the people that are listening. But then it's not to change now. It may be changing the, I don't know, next incarnation.
She's reading the book.
We only have to, it's a frequency. We have to just to do our part, change ourselves and be the example, perhaps.
Thank you. It is all of that and much more. But I bring this here because it begs us to think that we have made some advancement. And if the mentor is bringing this to us, is for us to think and change our ways. He says two things. He brings two highlights. Okay? First, and he asks, why should spirits come from another orb to help moralize your planet? The mentor says that. It's not that I asked. He says, first, having no previous ties arising from perturbing existences, they would not have to confront inner impediments to the benevolent giving process of painful reencounters with those who remain committed to evil, who have an interest in maintaining the moral backwardness of communities in order to exploit them physically in perverse phenomena of vampirizing of individual and collective obsessions. Strangers in lands ready to progress, they do it out of love, called to offer their values obtaining in other realms. facilitating access to the development of those who are natives longing for happiness. There's no connection. That no connection, it flows easier. Go back to the example that I gave. Why is it easier sometimes for me to come to Chris and Chris, why don't you change this way? Or for Chris to come to me and say, Leo, why don't you try to, say this in a different way? Versus if Juliana, my oldest daughter, come to me and say, Daddy, why don't you do this different way? I will take no offense when he talks to me, but I'll take offense when she talks to me. I'm giving you an example for us to think. The connection, the pride that we have sometimes stops us from living an error-free life. Right? It doesn't happen to all of us. Remember at the other highlight that I would like to bring from chapter 1, when Oscar started talking to Manuel Filomeno de Miranda about his last reincarnation when he was going through the war. And Manuel Filomeno de Miranda tries to change the conversation because he felt kind of down. And Oscar said, no, I'm okay. This is more like a Cartesian way for us to, trying to bring this stuff out so I don't suffer anymore. What he was doing, we must do. Something that happened in the past, break those connections, break those negative connections so that we can habilitate ourselves and others to help. Because until we hold that grudge or until we hold those connections, guess what? We're not going to ascend. Now let's go to the second one. Because the ones that are more advanced morally can contribute edifying examples capable of silencing the forces of evil and obstructing them with unsurpassed resources of personal sacrifice, since their aspirations are not immediate and self-serving in the world of forms. As Iasko said, we have this false knowledge that it should happen now. If I say it, the change has to happen now. No. It's for years to come. Reincarnations to come. Hence, Jesus is still working with us for many, many, many years. While others will be experiencing a form of temporary exile in that they are developed intellectually, but still inexperienced in the realm of love, in direct contact with the less evolved, they will feel the need for affection and caring, learning, in turn, the miraculous phenomenon of solidarity. Everything, therefore, is summarized in giving, which means receiving, and in receiving, which invites giving. It's a reciprocal way. These high-order spirits, they are vibrating in such a way that I have received so much. Now it's time for me to go back and give it back and help those individuals, us, to ascend as well. It's very interesting, folks, because, again, if Manuel Filomeno de Miranda chose to put this on the book, it's for us to study. It's for us to analyze. And it's not just because, we are the chosen ones, or these high-order spirits, that they are the chosen ones, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So these are the two reasons why we are receiving spirits, help from other spirits, from other orbs as well. And we should value this. And we should be happy that we are receiving these higher order spirits guiding us. To finalize, in order for this chapter, in order for the program to be carried out, at this very moment, brothers and sisters from our planet are introducing the same programs in other spirit communities near the earth so that together we may form a single caravan of industrious servants attaining to the orders of the terrestrial governor, its master par excellence. So yes, I did bring that message that I mentioned. Although great changes are taking place in phases of upheaval due to climate phenomena, pollution, and disregard for nature, they will not occur in the form of destruction of life, but in a change in people's moral and emotional behavior. Some will be called to change while suffering, through these occurrences, other though their discernment with respect to evolution. The reason I also highlighted this is because whenever we see something wrong, whenever we attack with something that is negative, we tend to do what? Somehow in our minds, in our feelings, eliminate it. It's a way to killing, right? Like we think of killing, of taking someone's life, but it's to kill that thought, to manipulate in such a way that you make it disappear. It's still a way for that we're still vibrating as we used to vibrate in the past. And it's okay, but we need to ascend. We need to change that idea. And by doing so, we need to do what? Change the moral. That's how these spirits are working. It's not that they're causing the natural effects, that those natural damages or problems that we're going through, but through that, they're helping cleanse the environment as well. But the more is going to happen in this intellectual arena, right? In the thought, in the feeling, that before we do something wrong, we will be invited to say, you know what if this was with me? So maybe we'll think twice. Because they could say, okay, now that we don't have so many spirits reincarnated on Earth that are doing negative things, we can go ahead and work. No. Because remember, after they discarnate, where do they go? They don't go into a vault where they need to be rescued as well. And this is part of the work that they're doing. But the change, guys, is mainly, again, the moral and in the emotional field. Okay? Just as the ocean waves voluptuously embrace the beaches that absorb their white foam, the new workers of the Lord will continuously change social habits, moral customs, literature, art, general knowledge, science, and technology, imprinting new texts of beauty that will awaken the interest of even those who are asleep for now. Every area. So we think that it's going to be a politician. No, it's going to be in art. We think that it's going to be only in this area of science. It's going to be math, right? Different areas. It's mainly think of the work as we have the mentor describes, that it's a collective work. So if we're hiring good, dedicated individuals to work for our company, we will hire what? Well-habilitated individuals that have some common sense. Imagine in these high-order endeavors, right? It's very important for us to think about it and to analyze, because the way we conduct our lives will facilitate their work and hopefully allow us to work with them as well. But before reaching, this is very serious, but before reaching that point, violence, sensuality, objection, scandals, and corruption will reach up unheard levels, reaching the bottom of the well, while degenerative illness, bipolar disorder, heart diseases, cancers, addictions, and sexual deviances will cry out for peace, for a return to ethics, morals, and balance. Fruits of people's passion, who will suffer their effects in the form of liberating infirmities. The values of full health, flawless joy, personal harmony, and integration into the cosmic spirit of life will slowly arise. After the storm, there has to be what? Some calmness. We create our mess, and through our own pain, right, and the pain that we feel for others, perhaps we may not be these individuals, but we're collectively working. And if a family member, a friend goes through a moment of a disease or whatnot, we suffer. And we tend to do what? To help others. To become a little bit more, how can we say this? To think twice before we say or act in an adverted way. So before it happens, We're going to see a lot of this. And it's happening now. It's happening now. Right, Chris? As in any battle, difficult moments will arise requiring balance and prayer. The combatants will be exposed to the world, misunderstood, challenged for acting differently, and for making the foolish uncomfortable, who in their inability to emulate them will fight them. They will suffer many bouts of profound and apparent loneliness, but they will never, ever be alone, because this spiritual solidarity of love will be with them, energizing them and encouraging them to carry on. And then he goes on into the explanation of the martyrdom and all those who in the past have taught us that this is happening again. It's just a continuation of the work, saying the model to follow is still Jesus. And the new wave of love will bring the return of the apostolate, the unforgettable days of the persecutions and martyrdom, which at present have different characteristics, since their bodies cannot be killed with impunity as in the past. It's different. It's much different. In the past, we were thrown to the lions. Now, we're thrown to the lions in a different way. But we're not alone. Again, the children choir sang a romantic ballad, totally unknown to me, while delicate rose petals fell upon us, dissolving upon contact and giving of a special fragrance. Brought just a picture of this amazing picture of Christ by Heinrich Hoffmann, 1889, just to bring again this picture of our Master Jesus helping, guiding us. And I would like to highlight one thing before we go on into the next chapter, that how the collective work happens within the high order spirits. It's not just one individual, even though we will see very soon that there is a mastermind that conducts the work, right? That assigns certain works for others, but they're never alone. They're never alone. It's a collective work. And I think this is something important for us to not just see, okay, a high order spirit came. No, Jesus said, yes, I can go over there and do, but why don't you go and help? Why don't you give yourself now, allow yourself the ability to pay back? Extended hand. It's happening. I don't know how they're traveling. Don't ask me that. We can kind of analyze that idea later on because it's far. But anyways, that's just a joke. So we move on to the fourth chapter, where Manuel Filomeno Miranda, Oscar, and Yvonne Costa, as you probably remember from chapter 2, yes, the one who actually prayed for the mentor to come, they were invited to meet so they can meet the individuals that will be conducting the work with them. And we're going to bring some of the highlights. But it's very orderly, if we can say this way. Everything has a time. When they finished the meeting, the spirit didn't hang around. You just, okay, now I have to go and do other work. And then Yvonne Costa brings the individual, the spirit who will conduct the work with Manuel Filomeno Miranda. Chapter 4, it starts explaining a little bit our situation right now. Then, in that moment around the 2004, after the Indian Ocean event, but it's happening to us now too. So this is the state of the union, if we can call it that way, of the planet. The string of events that had astounded society, inviting it to ponder the convulsions that shake the physical world periodically, in addition to the heinous acts of terrorism and atrocity, are unmistakable signs that a huge change is taking place. And we go back to the book again, to Genesis. The Genesis also explains these moments, these transitions that we're going to be going through very well. If we want to deep dive into the study, we can go to different chapters, not only chapter 11, but also different chapters of the book. But it's really, interesting that all of these things that are happening right now, I would call our attention to our psyche, the way we were thinking, the way we were vibrating on Earth. There is one passage, I believe on chapter 4, that Manuel Filomeno de Miranda describes how the weather is pleasant, nice. How they get to be in that pleasant moment, in that pleasant environment. Since we're bringing the weather because it affects us very much so. It affects me, I'm sorry. I don't like the cold. I do not like the cold. But how do they get to that condition where their colony is receiving the sun, the same sun, the lights of the same sun that we receive here, but it's pleasant? Call it 72 degrees. He explains that the filters that they have in their colony protects the rays. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. How do they get to that point? The psychosphere, right? Can it be machines? Well, what if it's machines that they can go ahead and control the layers of their ozone level, right? Whatever it is. They're using their intelligence for something good. What if it's something that directly they're affecting the actual levels, right? Or the layers that are affecting that location, wherever they are. They're working mentally to do something greater for the benefit of everyone. Do you see how it changes? What if we start exalting our thoughts or our feelings to do the same? Number one, it's already happening, right? Where we're trying to decrease the CO2 levels so we're not damaging, but it's a reactive mode. It's a reactive way of thinking. And I'm pretty sure we have a lot of technology that can help quite a bit. We see with cars, like right now, changing. We see our attention being called to other sectors, other areas as well that emits a lot of CO2, i.e. the cows. One would never think that cows would be emitting a lot of CO2, but they do. And because we eat a lot of meat, guess what? Don't eat meat, right? We eat a lot of meat. They have to, have a lot of cattle to supply the needs of our societies. And we emit a lot of CO2. But that's another topic. And I don't want to go into a tangent here, but it's for us to remember that we are in control to a certain level. And I think we have more control once we start using for the benefit of all. We're not going to dive into this picture, but this is basically for us to see. This is the physical. It's hard to see, but you see all the destruction after the tsunami or hurricane, whatever that is, that we as a society we go through. We can only see the physical. We can only, which in itself, right? It's already very difficult to analyze. But let's see also what Manuel Filomeno de Miranda brings to us in terms of what was happening in the spiritual side as well. And I put it all together. We're going to read it so we allow ourselves to act differently. The aftermath. The tear in the victim's eyes had not yet dried, nor had the tragic effects of the event diminished, and charitable contributions had already begun to be diverted for ignoble purposes, while the sufferers beheld the indifference with which they were being treated, relegated to their own devices after the tragedy. The beaches of several countries in the Indian Ocean were strewn with corpses. The thousands laid beneath the rubble of destroyed buildings, and insensitive tourist agencies were already planning new packages for other havens and places of leisure and perversion that had not been damaged. Fortunately, upstanding men and women, and humanitarian organizations and entities sensitive to the pain of their neighbors rush to the generously offer resources that could lessen the despair of the victims and survivors who needed to rebuild homes and continue the human experience. The spiritual spectacle in the affected regions, however, was very serious. Likewise, due to the decomposition of human and animal corpses and the absence of drinking water, the emergence of epidemics was a real threat. And spirits abruptly torn from their bodies were wandering, lost and desperate, around the areas where they had died. These areas had become garbage and debris fields on a heavy and menacing night without end. The cries of despair, the calls for help, and the phenomena of magnetization with other unfortunate discarnate constituted the extra-physical geography of the dreadful events. Crime took advantage of the deplorable situation to repress its victims. Cunning exploiters bargained over the spoils of the lost and displaced, and heinous conspiracies forged skillful maneuvers to extract the rest from those who had almost nothing left. And it's interesting that he's bringing both sides, the positive and the negative. There were a lot of help, but bottom line, there are things happening that it's like, really? People taking advantage of the suffering. Groups of people taking advantage of groups of people. It's not just one person, but this is the planet Earth right now. This is how we are vibrating. And one of the things that I would like to highlight as well is that he mentions is the media. We all remember. One thing that I'd like to call our attention is how many times we repeat watching the videos when a disaster happens. How many times we send those videos to one another of people suffering. It happens. Why? Are we going to do something about it? Because if I receive a video that doesn't make me feel good, what should I do? Stop, pray. Why am I going to send it to others, whatever? So there's a lot of things that we need to think about of what's happening in our environment and on how we are reacting to these issues. Because obviously, I say reacting, we don't have control of what's going to happen right now with the tectonic plates somewhere in the world. If they're going to shift or not, guess what? We don't have control of it. Now, I have control of what's going to happen afterwards, how it will vibrate, physically, mentally, and spiritually, right? We have at least control of that. So it's important that we take this aftermath and connect it with the higher minds, connect it with the higher beings who are there to help. So then we move on to the caravan, to what happens after they go through, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda goes through this aftermath, explaining what was happening on the planet Earth, both in the physical and the spiritual realm, but also he goes into explaining the group of people that he's going to work with, right? And the head of the work is Charles White. Don't ask me much more than what we're gonna see here, because I actually went after for a couple hours looking for this Charles White. There was actually a very famous doctor called Charles White in England, but it was not this gentleman, because here in the book, he was it was not the time that he was incarnated on Earth was not the same. So it's another Charles White if you try to go and look for. If you find it, please let me know. I would love to get to know a little bit more. But of an English origin who practiced conventional medicine, while incarnated, lived in Polynesia and lived with natives, received the wisdom from the natives, apparently natives apparent primitivism. He goes, and I'm going to only bring highlights over here, the main highlights of these individuals who are going to be working for us to make a point. But he really expresses the how we or he and the group of people as the conquistadors of that area went into this location thinking that we know better. And look what he says. We found in their seemingly crude worship profound information handed down orally from one generation to the next, along with their traditional activities. Their shamans, in their momentous spirit communications, were at the same time priests, doctors, thinkers, scholars, counselors, administrators, and effective psychologists. From them, we learn about the interference of the dead in the lives of the living. And we also learn that the most effective therapy for facing the challenges of the health disease binomial is always reciprocal love and care by all members of the clan. There are several highlights here, but one thing that we would like to bring is that these expressive traditions, it's actually studied by a lot of religious groups, right? In terms of how they practice, they connect with the beyond and we connect with the what's not touchable. It's called the expressive traditions. It's called expressive traditions because they orderly and through art, dance in many cases, they pass it along from generation to generation. And in this case here, we also highlight the fact that these individuals, even though they are considered indigenous or whatever we want to call, they have the help of the beyond. So we see the help happening now when we are, quote unquote, educated, right, advanced, but also these amazing groups of people, they're being helped. And it's nice that the mentor also brings this, mentioned this to us, Charles White, Dr. White would like to call, reminding us that we should respect. And the love as well in the family clan. That's how they move on. Sticking together, helping one another, right? Reciprocal love, they moved on. Think of these individuals in the past, how they were exposed to the elements, to illnesses, and we're here because they're able to give continuation to our species. They stuck together. It's not by chance that they bring this to us. And if we don't have any other means, we can orderly, as he's saying here, we can, through arts, through in many ways, we can pass the good things to one another, right? Our endeavor, Dr. White explained, is divided into two phases. The first takes place in the region of the tsunami, and the second in the psychosphere of Brazil, preparing minds and sentiments for special reincarnations. From there on, we're going to develop, but that's going to be another chapter. That's going to be another talk that we'll bring, and how they're preparing the environment for these other minds to reincarnate there. And then we continue. I kept the Dr. White there, and we see that a female spirit who served in, they were actually they were presented with a female spirit and two other spirits that will help in the work. Female spirit who serves as a nursing assistant to the doctor, as well as two dedicated workers that used to live in the Philippines. Anna, who is an Anglican, who was actually Dr. White's assistant as well. That's the female. Marco, one of the spirits, a Filipino who was a Catholic priest and who had devoted himself to the ministry of the religious faith and to early childhood education. He had discarnated in 1954 at 70 years of age. Father Marco knew well the region affected by the tsunami. And then Abdul Severin, a Muslim who had discarnated as a victim of malaria at 40 years of age. These are the main highlights that Manuel Filomeno brings to us. He mentions that Marco, the priest, was very jovial, very happy, to say the least as well. Something that I didn't bring there, but it crossed my mind. Oscar explained his Jewish background, whereas Manuel referred to his adoption of Spiritism. Again, highlights. Why do I bring this here? It sounds like the group is like a mini United Nations, right? People from all over. But one of the things that it caught my attention was the cultural sensitivity. Not only religious, which is definitely a good point, but culturally speaking. We have, through religion, the ability to connect with many individuals. We have a doctor, an assistant, a Protestant, right? Being an Anglican. We have a Catholic, a Muslim, a Jewish, and a Spiritist. Now, if we were to put a group together to rescue other people, who would we call? No, think about it. We would probably call people who think like ourselves. We would not think that, okay, where am I going? What region am I going? Who am I going to be talking to? It reminds me of Paul. Super. I think Paul was the master example of being culturally sensitive. He knew many, many, many groups of people. Hence, the letters of Paul, right? And we look at a work like this being displaced, being going to a location, they're trying to tackle several locations. If we go to the Philippines, for example, if we go to the area, we have everything. It's a melting pot. Muslims, Catholics, Jewish, right? So they have to work. They have to be able to accommodate everybody that they come in contact with. It's an amazing work to think that these minds, they're helping us. At home, quite often, I hear the request, let's just read in English when we're doing our gospel at home. No, let's read in Portuguese as well. Who knows? The spirits who are connected with us, since we have this background with the Portuguese language, they need the Portuguese as well. If we have someone at home who speaks Spanish, why not? If we speak German, read something in German. We have to be culturally sensitive with the people in front of us, the incarnated ones, but the discarnated ones as well. That doesn't mean we're not going to strive, since we're in this land, in the United States, to speak English well, to develop ourselves with this culture, because if we don't do that, we will also would be culturally insensitive. If we're in this country, guess what? We have to do our best to develop ourselves with the means that we have here. Get to know the culture, right? There are certain things that I may say in Baltimore that if I say in Westminster, Carroll County, it's going to be completely different. Okay, what are you trying to say? One thing that that I find interesting in the state of Maryland, I just said it, and that's why I'm bringing it here. I said Carroll County. Where do you live? Howard County. Now, you go to Florida and you try to say it, people will look at you like, okay, I live in Miami-Dade, Florida. Okay, Miami, that's it. You don't say the county, but it's something that we say here. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and it's so true. It's like, yeah, I live in this county, that county. You don't say the actual town that you live in. You refer to the county. But it's something that we develop in this state, right? So you kind of have to learn your ways around, right? On how do you speak, how to conduct yourself. So it's really interesting that we see this group of people managing, be able to manage, the resources that will be presented, to work with the people that they will come in contact in those areas. So it's really interesting that we pay attention to this. A couple final things. The Marco, who knew a lot about the area, explains as well that vacationing Westerners who had died there had a deep emotional connection with that people and with those individuals there, and had been attracted to the area by magnetic forces to redeem old debts that weighted on their moral economy. So a lot of individuals who passed vacationing or they were there visiting, right? Guess what? They had a connection. We have a connection because we suffer, right? We look back, it's 2004, but when we study, it's like, wow, and we think about it, many people passed, many people died. So they had a connection. Nothing is by chance. And then Manuel Filomeno de Miranda tried to understand a little bit more of why, or how can someone from a different background adopt some of these Spiritist teachings. He said, I was surprised, and this is Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, I was surprised and asked him how he reconciled, and again, he's referring to Marco, reconciled reincarnation with the Catholic dogmas he used to espouse. Yeah. Courteous and polite, Marco explained, my dear Filomeno, you know that the formulations of the truth depart from this, the real world, for the earth, and that religious clothe them in superstitions, myths, and dogmas, according to the levels of awareness of the people that believe in them, concealing some and setting others free. Nonetheless, when we return to the country of immortality, such formulas disappear, giving rise to the essence, which we quickly assimilate due to the affinity and the logic of the universal good. So the things that we are so connected here on earth, when we depart, guess what? We are able to see a much bigger picture. And interesting enough that he doesn't stop presenting himself as a priest. Because Manuel Filomeno de Miranda comes and says, oh, I'm seeing a priest right now. And the other one is presenting himself with the vestments of a Muslim. Their choice of how they conduct themselves doesn't change, but how they use their beliefs in relation to the world, right? Or to the colony, wherever they are. Because there are many of them, they were doing an internship in this colony where Manuel Filomeno de Miranda was. It changes. They use that to help others. They use it to better themselves and to better others as well. So it's really important that we see how we are applying our resources. Am I using the understanding that I have with Spiritism, or perhaps if we have a strong background in this or that religion, now that in Spiritism, to help others? And many times I asked why my parents didn't choose this or that religion, right? I had to choose for myself, especially when we have friends here who grew up in certain religions. I found I used to think that why that didn't happen to me. Well, maybe if I had it, I wouldn't be here now. But we have wiser people who had it, and they were able to apply in a different way. Or maybe the timing wasn't right yet. But the thing is, what I have now in conjunction with what I didn't have or what I had in the past is what matters. How I will conduct myself from now on is what truly matters. Despite the fact that if I were to walk here, with a turban one day, you guys will look at me, okay, Leo, what's going on? Well, I'm just trying this, but I'm still a Spiritist. Or if you guys see me in a dream, with a priest, garment, you'd be thinking, Father Leo. And we do have friends who, in many occasions, they have dreamed of being a priest, being a pastor. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We had to reincarnate, and we reincarnate in many different arenas. So that is the highlights that we would like to bring for these two chapters. They are amazing chapters. It calls our attention to act and react, reformulate our ideas, as Alba mentioned in the prayer, right? And allows us to really think how small we are, but it gives us the encouragement on how high we can fly, and how far we can go with our intelligence. That is not just the intellectual one, but in many arenas of life, right? So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to better ourselves. And the faster we do it, the faster we connect with these minds, I think we'll do much better before we discarnate. Because when we get to the other side, it's going to be the last thing we want to think is like, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have changed in this area. Just one small change. I never forget one of the and I'm not trying to scare anybody, but one of the speakers that we had here, she reminded us of something really interesting, that sometimes we reincarnate just for one small thing, but that one small thing is so hard, right? That it seems just mundane for some of us, but for that individual it's really hard. But when they do it, they're free from the body. They go back. And again, I know nobody wants to discarnate tonight or tomorrow, but think about these things. What am I missing? Right? How can I connect with these minds? Manuel Filomeno de Miranda mentions this group of people, right? Brings to us this group of people who are working on the planet Earth. In spiritist centers, that's something that I did not bring here. In spiritist centers, speakers, mediums, who are being influenced by these higher minds to help. Would you like to be in this group? I would. Can we be in this group? That will be up to us to answer it. And it's not easy, folks. It's not easy. We saw the reasons why, the two reasons why, right? We want a faster change. When we say it the first time, we want the kids to listen. And then I go back and yes, Dona Flavia had to say so many times. And still, there are things that right? The same time, we have connections. We have connections so strong that even though we're trying our best now and we project the best of us in the environment where we are, but deep inside of those individuals who are living with us right now, they still carry what we have done in the past. And it takes a million rights to put the one wrong that we did in the past. And it takes a long time. So, compassionate, right? We have to be more compassionate. We have to be able to look and say, all right, deep breath. The change is not going to come now. It's going to come in the future. So these are the highlights. I would like to open for comments, questions that you may have. Hopefully I can answer them. And if not, we will try to explore in different days. Daniel.
Will be the first today. Very good, Leo. It's amazing me all this information that this book is bringing to us, and thanks so much for summarize those chapters, because I know that if you go to the book, you'll be exposed to the details that Manuel Filomeno de Miranda brings to us. One thing that caught my attention, especially like at the end of this chapter 4, was this different group of people. They are in the spirit. They work as a spirit, helping in the process in that region, is that they already is fulfilling what the Spirit's book says at the last part, that the Spirit is not going to be the religion of the future, but the future of religions, because all this concept of reincarnation, of life after life, will be accepted in a very easy way, without the dogmas. So I think it's the first time that I see this kind of work in the spiritual literature, like well described in the spiritist books, what we learn in spiritual. So it's very nice to see this is already happened the other side. It's just a matter of time to materialize in the planet that we are living. So this is one thing that I like, so I just want to make this comment. The second one was, what is the second comment that I want to make? Okay, so, forgot. Maybe I should not. If I remember, I will make, but I'll pass for.
You hold the microphone real quick. Maybe you
Okay.
remember. One thing that I want to also connect is for everyone to revisit the talk that Alba gave last week. Because a lot that we study here, it's a pure example of Spiritism brings to us in terms of the seven, the different, there are many actually, I start saying seven, but there are many, teachings of Spiritism. First one, God. There's a creator, right? The multitude of inhabited planets. Communicability of the spirits, right? They're communicating with us. They're coming, there is a mediumship happening in the beyond. Because in order for them to bring a spirit from another sphere, a well-developed sphere, more than the colony where they were, there is a mediumship working happening there in the sense that they have to acclimate themselves to get to that, right? And many others. So just one highlight. So thanks, Daniel, because that kind of remind me of that passage.
I just remember what was the other comment is when they mention about that we need to reach a climb of, not climb, but we need to reach this level of where violence, where corruption, all these things need to happen for us in order to kind of like, that part over there. Sensuality, objection, scandal, and corruption will reach unheard level. So it is what we are living now. So the question, and I don't know if you can make a comment on that, is that how long this level is going to stay? Because we know that there is a time for end. Is there any information in the book that says, okay, this is going to last more like, I don't know, a century or 1,000 years? Any comment on that?
You touched on a difficult area for me. And I say difficult area because with Spiritism, I used to fight with this idea. I would like to bring to light the Richard Simonetti. In one of his talks, that he mentions that I remember clearly, and talking one time with him as well, directly when he came here, that we still have to go through a lot of suffering before we start to ascend, right? And there are many things that we can bring to mind here. Number one is the chances that are being given to spirit like us, who tend to hit the same note of doing wrong. And God's mercy it's so amazing that it still allows us to make amends in difficult situations, because it's not going to be the same. If we throw one option, one condition away, the next one may not be so easy. Or sometimes it is very easy because of God's mercy. But the idea of us having to suffer more when we have all of this, to me, it used to hit me so hard, right? Because we tend with Spiritism to feel a little bit more compassionate. We feel a little bit more responsible. We try not to err as much, but we're still not perfect. And we still have to take care of the old errors. That's one thing that I'd like to bring to mind, and I'll make my point. The second thing is that it's the psychosphere again of planet Earth and how we are vibrating. And I will bring back to me, how am I vibrating, right? With that alone, it gives us the gauge of how long this is going to take place. That's the only answer that I have, Daniel, because if we analyze ourselves, I'll give an example. And this is personal. I'll disclose to everyone, to the web as well. When we watch the news and we see something that does not connect with us, I feel upset. I do feel like I want to go and take matters with my own hands. Shake the person up. Right? Or we try to do what? Shut it off. Kill it. Well, sometimes we have to confront. But we need to confront how? The way these mentors are confronting it. Persistence. Applying different methods. Is there another way? Is there plan B, like Daniel likes to say, right? Because plan A is not working. So when we start analyzing what's happening here, and obviously if it's happening here, collectively, we're pretty much in the same way. But we have one thing, we have one another. That if I say something to Alba, Alba will come to me with her motherly heart and say, Leo, wait a minute. No, that's not right. But it takes her experiences to bring me to reality. At the same time, if I come and say something to whoever, I don't like to put myself there, but in order to help other people on certain areas of life that I have already mastered. That is the antidote, as we saw with the expressive groups of people, right? The indigenous. They stuck together in higher ideals. So to answer Daniel's question, there is nothing that tells us how long it's going to take, but the work, it's going to be long. We see now with changes in the political arena, we see now with changes in art, what we really say, okay, this is art. No, that's not art. The music that we're listening to nowadays, it's not music. It will come to a time that we're going to say, enough is enough. We need to stop this. And I'll give you a relief on how it happens. What happened to the individuals that, I use this example quite a bit, that went through the war, the Second World War. We don't have to go any further back. People who went through the war, they start living in fear, where they thought that another war would pop out at any time. So if they had a can of tuna, that can of tuna would definitely last for at least a month. I'm just giving you a crazy example. So what happened to the generations that came after? Some of us here. We start thinking, no, we need to change. We have to readdress our laws, where we're not going to have wars. We're not going to get involved with wars anymore. We're going to live with the plenty, right? Some of us went into a deplorable state of, no, my parents only had one can of tuna. I'm going to have 1 million, and I'm going to eat 500,000 in one day, right? But what I'm trying to say, folks, is that there are changes. The difficulties that we go through makes us change, makes us analyze what's happening in the environment right now. And we become more sensitive with the others as well. Because we don't want to go through what our parents did, or our grandparents, right? And we don't want our kids to live in the same way. But there is the collective that sometimes is extremely hard to battle, right, with our kids and everything. So it's going to take some time, but we really have the tools in one another to help minimize the time.
Leo, we are missing you on Thursday. We have a great discussion about this thing on Thursday. That's why Chris looked at me here, isn't it, Chris?
Yes.
So this is going to be a great addition in the Thursday group. So I'm glad that the people that come on Thursday is here. So it's in sync what we are learning in the book Heaven and Hell as well. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you pass it to Yasko? Lulu.
About how long, I don't know if you remember, Chico Xavier, in one of those, I don't know if Pinga Fogo or another interview, he said 2056, more or less, 57 will be, which is 100 years after the Spirits book was published, 200. So it will start now. We enter in the planet of regeneration, because we're still in this transition. The other piece of information you gave there, that these spirits that were held prevented to reincarnate because they were so bad and the humanity had to progress a little bit without them bothering here. Now they were allowed for the last time to come to the planet Earth before the planet Earth goes to regeneration phase. So imagine that would take around 50 to 100 years, for all those people to come and go. But each year, discarnate 50 million people in the planet Earth. So it is easy to clean up also, somehow, while is born, how are you permit now on to come to Earth more higher minds, art, people that were related to the Renaissance or whatever, all the philosophers to come back. So imagine that is very quickly we can renew the pot, because it's 50 million per year that you can, it's more than any tsunami that you can use. So this, I think, is what we have about information. The other things about many mediums in the spiritual world, this is true because people that are studying André Louis' collection, they notice that the language is different. So it's not, the source is not André Louis. He is kind of being the medium there for higher minds, many different minds that are, I'd say, dictating to him. Right. Because it's different. The philosophy is different, the theme is different. And also in Paul and Stephen, they said, although it's Emmanuel that is talking to Chico, most likely Paul is dictating or giving his report about his own life to Emmanuel. And also Stephen, which is a very high mind, is also being above Emmanuel or giving his account on this. So it's a team, like you said, it's a collective in different levels. So I imagine that this high spirit that you said that is coming from Pleiades, how many layers of mediums were there until get to Manuel Filomeno de Miranda? If it's so high that we, because of the frequency, we cannot hear, we cannot grab it. So it is many degrees of evolved spirits there and here.
You brought several great elements. One of the things that I would like to mention here is the fact that I love these ideas, and I do not discount, please don't take me wrong, on the ideas of the numbers, the years that were mentioned to us by Chico Xavier and by many others. And we can see here, because I love to play with numbers too. You probably remember the last time we were presenting session 1. I went back and started calculating how long, what age Oscar was discarnated, because it's important for us to go back and see where were we as a society when he discarnated, even though it was right after the war, because things started happening very quickly then. The point is that it's good for us to pay attention to numbers, so it gives us a sense of time, because we're in the flesh. But one of the things that I counterpart with that idea is, again, the mercy, God's mercy towards us. What if it takes a little bit longer? So the mark, because we tend to really think of, get stuck with this. Or there is, once I started thinking about this, what if it takes less? Because we tend to think negatively, well, it may be more than 2057, whatever time we mention. What if it's less? What if tomorrow we, as each one of us, start vibrating a little bit higher and say, no, this I'm not going to allow in my life anymore. No, I'm not going to think negatively anymore. I'll give you an example. Isabella, she went to get me somewhere, and she passed by this house, and she saw this beautiful house, and she started describing the house and this, and I was like, Do you want to buy it? And she thought I was joking, being sarcastic. And I was like, I wasn't. I was actually, making a valid comment. Do you want to buy it? Obviously, we have no intention to buy a house right now. But how do we project ourselves on the things that we find beauty? It's okay to want a nice, bigger house, a beautiful house. It's okay. But I'm using the example on how we project ourselves on what is of quality in life. To have a quality life, we prevent ourselves from doing it. Now, how many times we tell ourselves, I'm not going to get this job, I'm not going to be this individual that we aspire to be, I'm never going to be able to connect with a higher mind like this. Why not? Why are we shortening ourselves? When these examples are being brought to us, like Iasko said, of higher minds coming to us and say, wake up. We need you. We're here for you. But we shorten ourselves in every aspect of our lives. And if anything, as I was feeling small when I started thinking about these different constellations and all these things, I looked at, right next to my computer, I have my my telescope. And I was thinking, I can only get to these galaxies or these constellations, through a small telescope. What about my imagination, my connections that I can establish with these higher minds? It begs us to ask. It begs us to really think that, yes, we have a number. It's important. It gives us a gauge where we are or where we want to get to. But bottom line, we don't want to get stuck into it. And we want to work as fast as we can to reach higher grounds. That is, if anything, when we are amazed with these higher minds coming to us and these spirits, these spirit revelations and all, what about us? How are we vibrating, right? It begs us to ask. So with no further ado, and we can discuss more as we're going to spend some more time tonight here together. We cover these 5 amazing parts of the book. And next, it will be new experiences and the work of illumination. We have quite a but we are projecting still to finish before the end of the year. And we stay together. Read. Stay tuned, right? Read. I know, I do apologize, but I have to send the videos that we presented here the last time. I'll send it no later than tonight because I have already prepared. But read. Truly sit down and read these chapters. Highlight. Call me. Leo, I don't understand this. I'll probably tell you I don't understand either. Let's sit down and talk about it. But get engaged because that is one of the ways that we can connect with these higher minds. In that case, we leave you with this beautiful picture of Valdo Franco, who is an example for all of us. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda also, who worked in different ways to get where he is, right? Now, being a medium of these amazing works that are happening on planet Earth. Let's pray for one another. Let us pray for the difficulties that we're going through. Right now, we have an amazing, when I say amazing in a good way, situation that we're going through now with the coronavirus. A lot of people getting to this alertness, take it seriously. There's a lot happening, we can see already, to our economy, right? The economy of the world, that we put so much emphasis to it, begging us to really think and say, is that everything? Right? So many countries